The views expressed here are those of our hosts and guest speakers and do not represent the Uniformed Services University, the Department of War, or the Henry M. Jackson Foundation for the Advancement of Military Medicine, Incorporated. This is the Check Your Six Pack podcast. I'm Austin Von Lechtman, Mandatory Fun Day, and this is a veteran podcast done in conjunction with the Center for the Study of Traumatic Stress and Uniformed Services University. I am joined this week by Rocco Vargas, somebody who has seen a tremendous amount of success and who is a veteran. How's it going, Rocco? Can you introduce yourself?
I still am a veteran.
Well, yeah.
No, I'm kidding. No, I think that's good. I think you did it good. What do you want to know? Or how do I introduce myself in a way that you'd want to hear?
You introduce yourself in whatever way you want, honestly.
Okay. Vince Vargas, known as Rocco, through the veteran community more than anything. I did 4 years of active duty with 2nd and 75th Ranger Regiment. Then I jumped into the reserves as a drill sergeant. Simultaneously to that, I became a prison guard. Then I went into the Border Patrol. After about 7 years of Border Patrol, I went into film and television. Mm-hmm. Some who watch the podcast might know me from the Article 15 days of social media and videos and humor.
Sure.
And then still now to this day, I'm in the film and television space, but I've kind of pivoted into a lot of veteran wellness, just more based on learning a lot about my own life and kind of pivoting into trying to help others and serve in that capacity. So.
Sure. 2nd and 75th, that's at Fort Lewis, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What was it like being in like the premier infantry unit, really, like quite frankly, in the world?
Yeah. Well, that sounds nice to hear it that way, but I just wanted shorter deployments.
Because they do 90 days, right?
It could be 90, but it could also be extended a little bit further than that too. So
Sure.
Sometimes it's 3 to 6 months, depending on the tour. Sometimes you'll have like a surge as well. Some people got caught into, mm-hmm. Those would be like 30-day get there and get back. At the time I was a new father. I had a daughter who was 1 year old in basic training. She turned 1 while I was in basic training. And I remember when I was joining, I was just asking a lot of questions, and one of the answers was like, yeah, Ranger Battalion has shorter deployments.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was 2003, early on in the war.
Right.
We heard a lot of people getting stuck there for 15 months.
Yeah.
And I'm like, screw that. So knowing that those deployments were really long for other units, like my goal was like get to Ranger Battalion for those shorter deployments, mm-hmm. because I hadn't had, up until that point, I hadn't really had a chance of being a dad. I was just, me and who became my wife, we were just figuring it out as kids. You know what
Sure,
I mean?
Yeah.
So that relationship was rough, and then trying to be a dad, trying to figure that out was rough. And so getting to Ranger Battalion was more of like a motivation of like shorter deployments, more time with my baby, and that's kind of how I thought. But, I didn't want Fort Lewis. Everyone wants Savannah because of the beach.
Sure.
But when I got there, it was interesting. I think anyone who's deployed or anyone who's stationed there, the one bad thing you would say is the weather. And so it's raining.
I'm
all
from
the time.
that area.
Are you?
So,
it rains all the time during training. It seems
mm-hmm.
like they say if it ain't raining, you ain't training or whatever.
Yep.
So that was miserable, but for the most part, man, I loved 2nd Ranger Battalion.
Yeah. Where did you guys train at? So we went to the Yakima Training Center all the time.
Yakistan, we called it.
Yeah, is that where you guys went to?
Yeah, and then there was an Oregon facility out there that I think we did one time out there, but mm-hmm. yeah, mostly Yakima, the whole, when other units go to like an NTC, mm-hmm. we just did Yakima.
Yeah.
And the whole kind of like city that they built there and all that.
Yeah. What was the culture like with drinking specifically in Ranger Regiment?
I'll have to back up and say the drinking was very similar to my college baseball years. It was
Really?
was
It's like a frat house.
Yeah, like college baseball was big drinking. High school baseball was big drinking, but
mm-hmm.
literally college baseball was where I think I really kind of grasped on the drinking concept of like you have a good baseball game, you drink like all hell.
Yeah.
If you have a bad one, you drink even more, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that kind of cycle already started mentally. Playing college baseball.
Sure.
And in college was like party hard, play hard kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then when you get to Ranger Regiment, I kind of fell into that really comfortably where I was like, oh, we do the same here.
Yeah.
Party hard, play hard. And I remember my mindset at that time, 23 years old, my daughter hadn't moved to Washington yet. Pat Tillman was killed. And he was like, oh, there's a chance we could die.
Yeah.
You know, Pat Tillman was just killed by friendly fire. Eventually we found out, right? But the whole thing was like, now it's hitting really close to home.
Yeah.
And so I remember before they got back from that deployment, they told us to get a bunch of liquor and like porn. I don't know. It's just it's an infantry thing, I guess. I don't know. But we all did that. Like all us young soldiers who were waiting for the platoon to come back and receive them, we just put a bunch of liquor in the rooms and put porn there, and we're just like trying to keep them happy. But it's this really interesting culture where like that is what was expected in the battalion.
Really?
Like to greet them with like the gifts that they've been missing for so long, right? Because they're deployed and they just lost one of their brothers, our brother, right?
Yeah.
We weren't as connected because we never got to meet him personally. It was like I got there and it happened.
Yeah.
But then we also were told in 35 days we're going back to Afghanistan because they were part of a surge, like I was saying earlier. And so I think that became like party hard, play hard.
Yeah.
Drink because you can, and
Yeah.
you don't know if you're going to make it back kind of idea. And
Right.
so it was no different from college of just like party hard, play hard.
Yeah. So you were a high school athlete. You were obviously a high school athlete that was good enough to become a college athlete. So is that party hard, play hard mentality something that you had like your entire life?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a little bit of culture in there as well, is that, you know, in the Latino communities, we drank when we celebrated.
Yeah.
My father was okay with us drinking at a kind of a younger age. Well, I wouldn't say he was okay with it. It just kind of was like, it was a
It's
thing.
part of the culture.
Yeah, that's what I'd say. I'd say more of a culturally accepted for me to have a beer with my dad at a younger age.
Sure. How young would that have been?
Well, I was probably drinking beers at 14, 15. We had one of those beer fridges in the back where it's just all beer, and you'd lose count. So like, I don't think he ever counted them, and I would just sneak a few here and there.
Yeah.
And then I think by 18 for sure there was no issues with me drinking in the house.
Really?
Yeah, dude. I remember I was going shot for shot with a cousin for New Year's, and my dad's like, "All right," you know, not celebrating, but more like, "Hey, it's what we do," kind of thing.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Like I said, it wasn't like a thing of like, "Go drink, son." It was more like, if that's what you're doing, that's what you're doing in the house at least.
Sure.
But I'll tell you this. I remember the moment coming back from baseball, high school baseball, summer, get to the house. There was no water, and I just went to the back fridge and was like, the coldest thing we have is a beer. And I remember popping one and drinking it and thinking, ooh, dang, that actually hit the spot.
Yeah.
Drank that beer, and then by the time my mom got home, I'm sleeping on the couch, and I had like 6, just threw them down.
Really?
And it was the first time where like, you remember when you're younger, you drink a beer and it's like, oh, it tastes gross, but you just
terrible.
do it. You just do it, you know? It was the first time I was like, man, I really like these. And that was probably the beginning where I knew like I just would enjoy beers with the family whenever it was appropriate.
Yeah.
And that just kind of became a thing with my friends at parties or whatnot. And so that was kind of the beginning of like, this is just what we do. And it wasn't even thought of to be negative. It was just thought of, this is just how it is.
Yeah.
You know?
That's just the like familial norm. Yeah, that's really interesting. And so, I mean, so it sounds like your dad had a relatively hands-off approach on you consuming alcohol. He just
nothing else though. He was pretty hands-on with everything.
Okay, can you describe that?
No, my dad was someone who ran the family with an iron fist. He expected manners. He expected the respect. Yes sir, yes ma'am in our household. He's a former Marine. You know, my father's father, and I've never met him, so the stories that were told to me that he was an abusive alcoholic. He would come home from work. He was an elevator operator in New York, in the Bronx.
Yeah.
And then he'd come home, he'd grab his guitar, grab his bottle, a pistol is what they would call it, right?
Yeah.
He'd grab his bottle, go down to the corner, his friends would play, and he'd play all the way until he's drunk. And then he would come home sometimes and beat his wife, my grandmother. So my father was so accustomed to that him and his brother would kind of stay in the street. And so that's why my dad became kind of a street kid. Yeah. And several stories he's told me that, you know, his mom was getting rolled out in the stretcher, you know, from being abused. They essentially ran from him. They went to Chicago and eventually they went to L.A. My grandfather eventually kind of caught up to them, but his life kind of pivoted. He found himself doing some time in prison for a drunken situation where he pulled a gun and shot a couple guys who broke his guitar. Oh, wow. So he always had his drinking-related issues. So there's something to it where, now that I know, but my dad was pretty aggressive, but not that. You know, my dad was definitely not that. He was a good version of that, I would say. Is my dad wasn't an angry drunk. I've never seen him like, you know, the stories and movies you see of the angry drunk. My dad was not that. He was actually, let's give him a beer. He's actually in a better mood when you give him a couple beers, and he's kind of real chill.
Yeah.
But like, if you stepped out of line, you know, the belt was on the threshold of using, and it is what it is. I think at a young age I didn't understand it, but as I got older, I get it. You know what I mean? And
Sure.
He was the best dad that he possibly could know how to be, based on what he had as an example.
Sure.
So, yeah, that's how my dad was. But like I said, drinking was what my dad did. It was 5 to 6 beers a night, no big deal. Didn't affect him. Wasn't the type of thing where we were scared when he drank. It was kind of like I said, he comes in the door and like crack him a beer and chill out, Dad, kind of thing. And so it wasn't a negative thought to me.
Yeah.
I heard the stories of my grandfather later in life. As a youngster, like, it's just what we do. We watch boxing.
Sure.
I go get my dad beers, and that was like an honorable thing for a young Hispanic man to be like, hey, go get me a beer. Like, yes, sir. You know, like, so it didn't have no negative aspect to it at all. It really never did until I got older.
Really?
Yeah.
So how do you think his relationship with alcohol shaped your relationship with it?
It was, I don't know any different.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I didn't think of it like when other people say like, hey, because I made a lot of money off my dad because I recycled the cans. You know? So like, it wasn't a big deal to us. It was just the norm. Like, I can't even tell you that I felt any type of way because it wasn't just me. Every Hispanic kid I knew in LA, dad drank.
Yeah.
Or mom drank. So it wasn't like an uncommon. There was no negative undertone.
There was never this fear, like you didn't have a fear that you would turn into your dad because you didn't see anything negative out of it.
No.
Yeah.
Not at all. No, I never thought like anything of it. And I never thought, I remember as I got older in military and stuff like that, when someone would say they don't drink, I'm like, I'll never trust a man who doesn't drink. Like that's the common thought process I had. Right. Because it just wasn't there was nothing negative to it.
Sure, yeah. And that's funny you brought it back to like the military culture. I don't know. It's just drinking is like an inherently high risk. The way we do it in the military, it's very high risk with very like minimal to no reward.
Yes.
You know, because you make a mistake when you're drinking, and I mean, you're like your ass is grass.
Yeah.
Like it is. I don't know. It's just interesting how we view it and how it's so commonplace and so prevalent in our community.
It's so, from what I know now, right? I'm in a whole different position in my life now. But from the military, it was so accepted, and if you didn't drink, in Ranger Battalion, you were definitely frowned upon.
Right, yeah.
Definitely. You know what I'm saying? And the craziest part about it, there's a statistic that Ranger Battalion per capita has more drinking what would you call it?
Like incidents?
Yeah, incidents than any other unit in the military per capita.
No kidding.
Yes, and that's how most people get kicked out of Ranger Battalion, right? We have a thing called RFS, Release for Standards. It's all drinking. Drinking and then usually connected to either, domestic violence claim, whatever, whether it is or it isn't, but claims, DUIs, and freaking drunken fights.
Yeah.
All of Ranger Battalion is that, because our cycle of life is deploy, then you got 6 months train up, and that train up is just like, it's just madness, right? It's like, it's pretty heavily loaded with just training and training and training. Even when home, you're not really home because you'll stay at the barracks and work until the next day. And then those nights are drinking, and it's just kind of this cycle of like war, drink, give your family a little bit of attention, drink with the boys, go back to war, and that cycle continues. And we lose Rangers all day long to DUIs, drunken fights, and domestic violence. Bonkers.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's a group of some of the most high performing guys in the military, right? That's an elite unit. And it's like work hard, play hard, like you said. The risks of when they go out are higher than even a normal infantry unit.
Yeah, and I'll say this. I get it, right?
Yeah.
I freaking get it. And it's I was there. I know what it feels like. I remember I said bye to my wife, and she went back to LA to hang out with her family during the 3-month deployment. And that night we all went out. And it was just like, yeah, man, because you might die. And it's like, I'll max out a credit card all night because I don't know if I ever need to pay this ever again. You know what I mean? So we'll go ahead and just drink, you know?
Yeah.
And it's this really interesting cycle that mentally you just kind of put yourself at ease. Well, let me just enjoy it. And that's what we do. And I'll say the domestic violence comment is not that they're guilty of it, but like there's a lot of claims because the relationships are stressed, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just someone calls the cops or whatever, and whether it is or it isn't. But I don't want Rangers to look like they're all bad. I'm just saying,
Sure, yeah.
it builds to these incidents that cause this kind of scenario, and you just see it way too often.
Yeah, I mean, alcohol will have people acting in a way that they wouldn't otherwise. I mean, it just is what it is. And then you add to that pressure, stress. You know, you add to that normal conflicts that are present in military relationships.
Yep.
You know,
and then post-traumatic stress.
Yeah, post-traumatic stress, and it's just all a recipe for disaster. So at what point did you feel like you identified, all right, I might have some problematic behavior, I might have an issue?
That was way later in my life. After I've gotten out of active duty, I started drinking a ton. I find myself doing this cycle of, you know, you lose men, and this weird internal battle of how do I show them that I love them?
Yeah.
And then I guess my answer was like, well, drink during their anniversary of their death, drink of their birthday, drink of Memorial Day, and show them how much you love them, like a figment of my imagination. Show them how much I love them by seeing how much I destroy myself.
Yeah.
And that kind of mindset happened for many years. For a lot of my guys, a lot of the guys in my platoon were getting DUIs, were getting arrested during the anniversary date of the death of two of our friends. And I saw this cycle happening for years, and I was a part of that with them. You know what I mean? Just like, hey, you know, for a long time I'd drink 2 beers before I'd start taking shots, and those 2 beers were just in thought of them. You know what I mean? Kind of. We have a thing called "To the Breezes" in our platoon. It's just a kind of a part of a poem that we've all kind of taken on that represents those two.
Oh, really?
And, you know, I would post 2 Miller Lights because that's what they drank. And I don't even like Miller Lite. I was a Bud Light kid, you know what I mean? So I'd drink 2 Miller Lights and just in their memory, and that would start off my night. And then I'd start doing 2 Miller Lights and a shot of tequila because that was the starter. And it kind of continued to develop into something more and more and more. And it was just this emotionally charged thought all the time. Like, if I'm going to drink, it's to them first, you know? And it tends to build. It tends to build into a bigger beast that you kind of lose control.
Yeah.
And beer wasn't doing it for me.
Sure.
By the time I met my current wife, you know, I already had kind of a platform, and people would want to do like questions and answers.
Yeah.
And so I started getting like gifts of scotch. You know what I mean? So when it went to scotch, and I can drink a bottle of scotch in a 30-minute questions and answers and have no effect on me, that's where my wife started to say, like, hey, you know, we should look into this. Like, that's kind of crazy that you drank a whole bottle of scotch. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm doing good. I still wake up in the morning, get the kids ready for school, and have no issues. So I wasn't
performing.
Right, exactly. Performing, everything. I was still doing all the things. And I didn't identify it.
Yeah.
And I was still very immature in the mind of what drinking is. I'm like, whatever, it doesn't hurt anybody. And me and her were still having a good time with drinking. As in, like, we're still dating and early in our marriage, right? And so I think when she saw that live, it was the first time she was like, do you have a problem? And I'm like, no, because I woke up early and with no hangover.
Right, yeah.
Right. And so that's when I probably first started to question, like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
You know? So I'm sober now.
Yeah.
6.5 years about. Just under 6.5 years. And that started kind of simultaneously to me getting my education in psychology and learning more about it, because as the years went on, I noticed I've struggled with some post-traumatic stress issues, which I ignored for a long time.
Yeah.
And I noticed that I was drinking because I was struggling with sleep. Sleep became an issue because I'd have this like terrible nightmare. I'd have it's a recurring dream that happened all the time about a lady who in Iraq would look at me, and one night she's judging me that I killed her family, and the next night she's looking at me for help. And it's the same image, the same lady, the same corner, and I would have that dream, pretty vivid.
Sure.
And was what I can think now is probably more of a guilt of an incident that happened overseas. That wasn't me engaging on anything. It was the platoon really. We got into like this ambush kind of went down, whatever, and everyone's kind of engaging on this vehicle. These individuals used their family in the back seat.
Yeah.
The vehicle was taken out by a 50 cal gunner, and everyone else who just threw rounds. But there was an older female in the scenario of it all, which I guess I hate using the term, but the collateral damage of war.
Sure.
You know, the unethical practices that they fight, right?
Yeah.
Left me really battling for a long time to try and justify that moment.
Yeah.
Whether it was even me pulling the trigger or not, it was just like the whole platoon just going at it, right? Just everyone's trying to survive.
Yeah.
But as I struggled with my own faith, I struggled with trying to come to terms with that moment, and then it kind of opened up the questions of like the whole experience of war.
Yeah.
And so as I'm internally battling this faith and what's righteous and what's not, and the war itself, that battle is happening inside me, and I'm trying to cope with it through alcohol.
So you had a really overtly emotional kind of reason to drink, right? You talked about it being like in honor of your friends. And I know for myself, I'm a very all or nothing person. Is that something that resonates with you? Yeah. And so if I have a healthy relationship with alcohol now. I can have a couple and cut it off. Yeah. But for a very long time, and with a lot of things in my life, if I started at all, it's just getting done all the way. You know what I mean? And so it's almost like you're busting the seal or whatever, however you want to say. But do you feel like when you kind of tried to start addressing this stuff, did you feel like you were dishonoring your friends? I mean, did that make it more difficult?
Yeah, it was if I'm not feeling pain on their anniversary date, am I still acknowledging them?
Do you still love them?
Right. And if it doesn't affect me anymore emotionally, did I forget them?
Yeah.
And that was a hard thing to cope with for a long time.
Right.
I understand it now. Like I said, I've done a lot of work.
Sure.
I've done a lot of.
Well, it sounds like you're a mental health professional at this point.
Yeah, I do substance abuse counseling right now, and which leads sometimes to like the mental health side of things and why they even drink, right, or why they even have any kind of addiction. But it was hard to kind of get to the point where like I should be able to experience life and enjoy it and not feel guilty for that. And that's what I was fighting for a long time. And it's crazy, you know. There's guys that had closer relationships with these two, but I was offended. I was hurt by it. You know, I was upset, and you know, at times I wished it was me rather than them because I believe they were better people.
Sure, there's some survivor's guilt there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, drinking just became how I associated with my love with them.
Wow, that's and so did that make it? I mean, did that make it more challenging to like cut things off or address the problematic behavior?
I didn't see it as a problem at all.
Yeah.
And you know, I had a Border Patrol agent friend who was the one who kind of saw it as a problem.
Really?
Yeah, he saw how I was beating myself up. He saw how I was struggling with these post-traumatic stress moments on the border. The smells are similar to Iraq, the weapon you hold, all these things. And he noticed it, and he's the one who mentioned it to one of the Special Operations and Border Patrol, really awesome community. And we had a counselor named Tanya Glenn out of Texas, really great lady. And he was the one who told her. And so then she pulled me aside and talked to me. And she was the
first.
That's
a good friend.
Great friend. She's the first person to really say the words that made me comfortable enough to try counseling. Yeah. You know, because I tried to do the group counseling, and at the time I wasn't mature enough to handle that.
Sure. Was that like AA group counseling? What do you mean?
The group counseling is post-traumatic stress counseling through the VA.
Oh, gotcha.
And so, because I knew there was there, but I didn't want to address it in a big way. And the funny thing was that the group counseling in the VA is super hard. At the time, I was obviously very egotistical. I got out of the military. I'm like, I'm a Ranger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the kid next to me is like, I was a cook, and I wake up every morning, every 30 minutes, and I check the doors. I'm going to make sure they're locked. I'm like, shut up, cook. You know what I mean? So I wasn't. Go make me eggs. Shut up, right? Like I was super like, not ready to hear anyone's version of what they think post-traumatic stress is,
Yeah.
right? Because it was the Pain Olympics in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I felt like I had the gold medal. And so I was really rude to the community of that. And so I told myself, like, I'm not going to counseling anymore. Those guys are all freaking weirdos, right?
Yeah.
And so I wasn't ready. I was very immature in how I saw it. Very egotistical, because the Ranger community kind of turns you into that at times. And not in a bad way. You got to be that to be good at war too, right? So that version of me wasn't ready. But as I got older and I talked to this counselor, she was just like, F your feelings, dude. I just want to fix your brain. And I was like, oh, that's cool. That's a cool way to say it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it made me more curious about what's out there. You know, she
Sure.
put me through some EMDR, the EMDR sessions, and then I started reaching out to more counseling. I got more connected to the VA and started really trying to find answers in, like, what's going on with me.
Right.
At that time, this is before I met my wife, right? At that time, I ended up going through divorce. I'm going through this phase of trying to figure that out. Drinking, because that's what you do sometimes, right? And so a lot of things are happening in my life. And when I met my wife, I kind of got to a place where, you know, I was a single dad of 4 kids. And my kids didn't really know who I was as a man. They knew the dad who worked, and they knew the dad who drinked, right? So, or drank. So I'd go to work and pay the bills. I knew that was my job as a man, and I felt like I was satisfied in that just alone.
Yeah.
And then to come home to have to manage all the other stuff, like birthdays and teaching them how to ride bikes and getting them to school, that was a challenge for me, and I hated it and didn't want nothing to do with it. But I had to. It was just me, right? And I had a couple people helping, but for the most part, I had to be the one to cultivate what that looked like. And I didn't know how to do that without drinking. Kids' parties, I had a case of beer in a cooler. I'd put it in the trunk, and I'd go in there and be like, hey, can I bring beer? They're like, yeah, and I'd bring the beer and just drink. And so, like, a lot of their memories as a kid, I don't really remember anymore because they were all pretty hazy.
Yeah.
My 22-year-old now, she mentioned years back, was like, man, Dad, you remember when you taught me how to ride a bike? I was like, I don't remember a lot of their youth, because for some reason, whether it be trauma mixed with TBI mixed with alcohol, it doesn't exist to me anymore. So I have no recollection of a lot of their childhood memories that they have. They don't exist to me. And that bothered me. And I've told the story several times before, but my now 20-year-old, she was like, we were driving and I put some music on and I'm singing. I'm acting a fool like we all would, but they've never seen that version of me. They've never seen a dad who took his guard down and was just being a goofy, normal human being because I was either working or drinking, right?
Yeah.
And so they finally got to see that, and she was like, Dad, you're actually really funny. And I was like offended because I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm pretty freaking funny. Like, all my friends think I'm funny too. Like, how do you not know this, you know? And it offended me that I wasn't giving them that version that they deserve.
Yeah. But how profound was that moment for you?
It's one of the most vivid memories that, like, shocked my life. It pivoted everything for me. Because I was like, well, how do I, from that point forward, it was like, how do I become a better father for them?
Yeah.
How do I become more relevant? How do they get to know me as a man? You know what I mean? Because they don't know that, you know?
And so it sounds like you had, not like, I don't want to say the bare minimum, but you wanted to just meet what you saw as your obligation and then do what you wanted outside of that. And then everything shifted and you said, no, how do I give as much as possible? Not just tangibly, physically, but all of the intangible ways that fathers should, like, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not to say my dad was awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Like, but he too was a hardworking man who paid the bills.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so what he represented in a man was I just needed a match.
Sure.
You know, and I was matching. But now, like, life is so different, and I want to give them all of me that I can, you know? Like, me and my dad didn't have these deep talks. It was more like, you know, like, are you good? I'm like, I'm good. He goes, all right. You know what I mean? So it was like, now I'm like, me and my son, I'm like, I'm trying to get, like, what do you need? How can I help you? Let's talk about whatever conversation you want. But that's me learning how to be the version that I want to be. I want to give them everything. I want them to know everything, and I want them to come to me for everything.
Sure. Have you had conversations with your kids about alcohol?
They know everything now.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, when I decided to go sober me and my wife, we had to do in vitro for our last 2 kids.
Okay.
And it was just like, my wife's just like, you need to be really healthy. You need your body to be like the top performing so we can make sure this $30K doesn't go to waste. You know what I mean? So I was like, okay, well, we both agree, like, let's just stop drinking. And at the same time, I'm going to college for my master's in psychology, and I'm coincidentally learning about how post-traumatic stress, alcoholism, and TBI are like a concoction for suicide ideation.
Yeah, for disaster.
Yeah, disaster, right. And I'm reading these white paper studies, and I'm like, and I looked at it, I was like, no one ever told me that. Like, this is pretty dangerous, you know what I mean? Like, no one ever mentioned, like, all these things combined is like a cocktail for the worst thing ever.
Right.
And then I'm losing friends, right? I'm losing friends. And you start to question, like, well, we had the same deployments. You know what I mean? We have similar lifestyles. What pushed him over the edge? You know, and what do I do to not put myself in that position?
Was there fear? It sounds like there was fear present when you started learning about this stuff.
There's fear about not being able to be around for my kids long enough for them to experience me. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's fear now in dying because I'm actually enjoying this shit.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, when I would join the military for my daughter back then, was like, well, if I die, she gets $400K and I'm a hero.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the mindset.
But you're worth more alive than dead now.
Right. Well, you don't know that value.
Right.
I didn't know anything. I don't know why I'm getting emotional about that, but, like, I didn't see much in myself at the time. And now, you know, a lot of my motivation is trying to inspire my kids and hopefully lead them and just do things where they can look back and be like, well, if he can do it, I can. You know, and so it's, I don't want to die right now. I know it's going to happen, right?
Sure.
And as a man of faith, I don't really fear it in that sense. I fear that I've just not given them enough yet, you know, and so I want more time, you know, and so that's where I'm at now in life, is trying to I've learned so much about the drinking thing that I tell them, like, don't. My 15-year-old and 16-year-old, they don't even remember me as a drinker. They're like, Dad, you used to drink? I was like, yeah. So, which is crazy that 6 years can pivot their whole belief systems and thought process of a man. In 6 years, I've been able to completely erase every memory they've ever had of me drinking, and they don't even know a man that drinks. And they just like, oh, yeah, Dad doesn't drink.
That's incredible.
6 years.
It's not that long.
It's not. That's what blows me away. I'm like, what's wrong with my kids? They got brain injuries? What's like, how do they forget?
I mean, I think it's a great moment of hope for anybody that, like, because I remember, you know, there were times when I felt like I've done this, like, too much for so long. Somehow I thought maybe I messed up my kids. And I didn't even really, like, drink a lot in front of my kids. But it just... I don't know. It's interesting, the thought processes you get into and the things that you'll use to justify continuing to drink. Yeah. Like when you have a problem with it. For me, when I was learning to address the problematic behavior, one of the things that worked really well for me was understanding, like, why, like, literally physiologically in my body, sometimes physically in my body, things were happening. And when a counselor explained to me, there are literal physical neural pathways that go through your brain. And the brain wants to stick with those same pathways. And when you deviate, when you do something different, even if it's just a different way of thinking, you create a new pathway, which the brain and the body naturally don't like. Yeah. But, you know, sometimes you have to do that. And so understanding that was really cool for me. And that's what, you know, that's one of the things that helped me get it under control. What were some of the things that helped you get it under control?
You know, I think I weighed really heavy on the worst case scenario that could happen if I continue that path. Yeah. Right. That was a big one. Just really, it became like reframing drinking. I started reframing it to the point of, like, why do I even need this? Right. You know, without it, I still entertain myself. I still have fun. And so then I started to think, like, why would I allow alcohol to control me so much for so long? Right. And then it was just like, well, now it's a challenge because screw that. I'm not going to let anything control me like that. And that's where it became like, I just wanted to mentally, like, be in control of this. Like, I don't want alcohol to control me in the sense of, like, I had to have it. I needed it to experience life. I realized that I never was willing to experience life completely raw without alcohol. And that means I was never even experiencing life in the realest fashion. Yeah. I wasn't willing to face hard stuff. I wasn't willing to even face good stuff sober. So I never even knew what life really was without it because I always had it involved in life. And I learned that I became a better person going through the hard and the easy and the happy stuff and everything sober because now I'm fully allowing myself to take it in raw.
Yeah.
Like, boom, straight up. And so that made me a better person because now I knew how to manage hard things. I knew how to manage hard conversations.
Yeah.
I knew that, this is something I need to check, and so maybe I need to go to counseling to fix this.
Yep.
But I was actually in a position now that being sober had a whole different view on life because I actually had to experience it now.
Sure. Yeah. So you've probably at this point experienced emotionally traumatic events sober.
Yeah.
What was it like the first time dealing with that and not drinking?
You easily resort back to wanting to drink.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
Your mind goes like,
100%.
Oh, I need a drink.
Yeah.
I'm gonna drink this out. And when you're able to fight that, I turned to journaling is what I started to do.
Really?
And I just started writing.
So are you literally just writing about your day? What does that journaling look like?
I write about everything, but the journaling in the most stressful moments is about what I'm going through and what happened to it, and or what led me to this point, and what are my thoughts at the moment.
Oh wow! So you're like analyzing the whole situation.
Yeah, and I think it's created a lot of little things that I've published, or whether it be music or a poem or a book or something
Really?
like from like, feeling insecure, walking into a house in a crowded house and still feeling alone, right? Those moments where you're like, I feel like this whole house doesn't even see me at times.
Yeah.
And it's more me fighting a depressive state, right?
Sure.
And easily would love to drink at that moment to kind of blur that whole thing out. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? But then I sit in it and I write about it. And it turns into a piece to where I can hand to others and be like, man, I felt like that before.
Yeah.
It becomes therapeutic for not only me, but others to not feel alone in that moment. It's like, well, why do we feel that way? Well, it's our mind playing tricks on us because absolutely my kids love me. Absolutely my wife loves me.
Yep.
But for some reason, I got into a space where I started to feel that way. And I would normally just turn to drinking and ignore it. Like, let me go find my friends and just drink and feel loved.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In this facade, this fake version of what love is.
Yeah.
Because I never wanted to experience a house that didn't feel affectionate, but I also raised a bunch of independent kids that were on their own. So then I'm a little pissed. I'm like, damn it, I wish they needed me right now. Well, they don't need you when they're teenagers. They don't need you at times because you've built them to be independent. So it was this like lonely dad phase of like, drinking would be really good right now for me. But no, I'm completely wrong.
That's incredible. And so, I mean, have you shown people like the things that you've journaled and then it resonates with them?
Absolutely.
So yeah, some people have stories that are just, they lost everything. They ended up homeless. Some people have stories that really nothing that catastrophic happened, but it was very clearly having an effect on their life. And it's funny because those are about as far as you can get from each other.
Yeah.
Very, very different. But there's similarities that we all have in the way that we think, in the way that we feel, the way that we view ourselves, the way that we view the world, and like the conversations that we've had with people that have come to us and said, hey, I think this might be a problem. And, I would encourage people, because I was told this, when I was trying to get a grip on my problematic behavior, look for the similarities, not the differences, because it can easily become a point of justification. Oh, I didn't get a DUI, so I can keep drinking. I've never gotten in a fight with the cops. I've never, maybe had really dark thoughts of suicide, stuff like that. And it can become a way to justify continued drinking. I mean, what do you think of that?
I agree. I think that's why all these guys still turn to drinking and don't take a beat and check themselves a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think everyone needs to go sober,
Yeah.
right? Like, I'm not saying that. I'm not the advocate for, like, everyone get sober. But I would say take some time off drinking and evaluate your life and do it sober.
100%.
Experience your relationship sober. Experience your kids sober. Go through hard moments sober to allow yourself to develop these mechanisms that you need to live
healthy
a long,
coping
healthy
mechanisms.
life. Yes, absolutely. And that's what I would say. I mean, if I could tell any person in the military that's getting out of the military, I'd say take 1 year off. 365 days sober. Just do that for yourself.
Yeah.
They'll learn a lot about themselves in that.
And
year.
if you have a lot of reluctance to do that, might be time to address the behavior.
Yeah, if you've ever said, I don't trust a man who doesn't drink, you might want to question your own behavior as well. It's crazy. But it's been really rad to watch big influencers in our community go sober.
Yeah.
And see it change their life for good, because we needed some kind of other side of the spectrum, because for so long we were all just drinking.
Yeah.
You know, I owned a whiskey company, bro. You know what I mean? I was a part of the big wave of believing that getting guys to drink in a community is healthier than them drinking alone, which I still believe that's probably true.
Yeah.
But what you breed with that is a drinking culture that might be unfair for those who are struggling.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I pivoted into my sobriety, and I like myself a lot more that I'm sober. And I would say, like, I think a lot of people should check their drinking for a while to really experience life sober and build those mechanisms. You're right. And I'll add this in. I don't want to just talking the whole time. I apologize. But people don't realize it is a part of a self-destructive mechanism that we implement in our lives when we feel that we're not enough or when we're struggling and it's a cry for help. When you have unhealed trauma and you don't know how else to manage it.
Yeah.
And so they should question themselves and say, what's in me? What's subconsciously deeper in me that I don't know how to stop this, or I don't know how to manage, that I need to address? Because it is like the evil that's coming out of them to, like, let's go drink again. Let's go drink again.
God, yeah. That's incredible. I do have a question. So was there a moment a definitive moment that you remember when you looked at yourself after you'd gotten this stuff under control and you really thought, oh, wow, I like the person that I see now?
Yeah, it's me right now.
Really?
Right now. So sober for 6 years, and in 6 years I got a bachelor's, 2 masters, published a book. The list goes on. Like, my time focused towards accomplishing these goals, I'm way better at it now. You know what I'm saying? I'm in a doctoral program right now. Like, I like the version of me that is put alcohol aside and filled that time, that void, with accomplishments.
Do you feel like you would have accomplished all that if you had continued on the path you're on?
Absolutely not. I didn't think I thought it was great. I thought I was a good dude. The drinking version of me thought I was a really good dude.
Like, I'm just one of the boys.
Yeah. And I wasn't a bad guy. I would say I wasn't a bad guy, right? But the hurt and broken version of me didn't think very highly of myself.
Yeah.
And I didn't believe I deserved more than what I had.
Right.
And the sober version of me started to really heal. Started to had to pay for a lot of childhood traumas that I've been avoiding.
Yeah.
You know, adult traumas I've been avoiding. And as I started to learn a lot of the stuff, man, I really started to like what I could accomplish. And I like the challenge of, like, what more can I do?
Right, yeah. So you talked about some of the successes that you've had. You know, you got out of the military, you entered like effectively the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
You know, what drew you to that?
Growing up in LA, man, you just see the Hollywood scene, like, so up close that it seems attainable. Friends that are actors, or friends of parents who are producers, and it seems like it's within reach. But I avoided it and ignored it because baseball was so important to me at the time.
Really?
When I did the YouTube stuff with Matt and JT and Article 15, that's when I knew, like, what's bigger than this is film, and
Sure.
I want to get there. Then we produced in Range 15, and that was, like, day one. I looked at Nick and Van, and I was like, bro, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Because, like, there was some kind of calling to it for me. It's the first time in my life that I'm not using my brawn
Yeah.
to engage things. And I have always been a physical sports kind of person, and so the adrenaline junkie of that was always fun.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I can match what the adrenaline is of using my mind and portraying a character.
Yeah.
For some reason, it is far past what adrenaline of kicking in a door. It's intense,
Yeah.
and I feel like I just went through a battle when you have a good scene.
Really?
And you're in the moment and you're emotionally throwing freaking emotional darts at you know what I mean? And you go, there's nothing like it for me. I think people find that in skydiving, they find it in motorcycle or whatever.
Yeah.
I find it in performance.
Sure.
And once I knew that, man, that was my addiction.
So did you find, well, first, Do you feel that, the military sets people up to have success in that industry?
I wouldn't say necessarily in that industry, but the skills you learn in the military can make you very successful in film and television because of the hierarchy understanding, the hard work ethics, the being professional and being prepared. All that stuff aligns really well with being an actor or someone on set, right?
Really?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a space for it that makes sense where you can just pick up and turnkey go. But not everyone is good in front of the camera. And some people are better behind the camera.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
some people are natural entertainers that you're like, dang, they'd be great actors. Some people never want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's so funny. I've got obviously a ton of friends at this point that have gotten out of the military, and they've all told me, being on time, having a professional appearance, and just being able to speak relatively well, make you head and shoulders above the vast majority of people in the workforce.
yes. It's, I don't think I would have gone as far as on Mayans if I didn't have those characteristics. I think what kept me on the show as long as I did was I was always willing to learn. I was kind of like the yes sir, yes ma'am kind of mentality. I was there on time every day. I was always prepared. Like my lines were ready. Outside of that, I was a good person, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't a Blue Falcon by any means,
Sure.
And I was always willing to be like, they were like, hey, do you want to be a military advisor? I'm like, yes. Like, how else can I be available to you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I kept just saying yes, yes, yes. I went from a reoccurring guest star to a season regular to also a writer of the show in 5-6 years.
Wow.
That doesn't happen very often. And I think that's just a testament to just being ready and available to work hard and just learn, man. And I think that's what we do in the military. You show up and say, yes, sir. You watch, you pay attention, you learn.
Yeah.
And that's what I...
Make yourself an asset to the
Exactly.
team. Is there, are there projects that you want to complete in that space?
Absolutely, man. Film and television is the biggest influencers of our time. Everything, people wear stuff they saw on TV, from a TV show to a movie. We in the military, we communicate sometimes just by quotes from movies.
Quotes.
Right?
Milk was a bad choice.
Exactly. So all that to me is super interesting, right? I'm kind of in the communication space, and I realize how influential the words we use, the movies we watch, all of that is. And I would love to be kind of a positive shift in making movies that I think are really good for our kids, really good for our military, really good for veterans.
Sure.
There's a lot of veteran content out there that kind of leaves veterans in a negative outlook, and I hate that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stereotypical tropes that are used, a lot of cliches, and the broken veteran thing. I think it's great to portray it, but I do think it gets portrayed far too often.
Yeah, and that's a big battle of mine. Is it true? There's some truth to that, for sure.
That is some people's experience, but I think the vast majority of people get out of the military and they are.
I agree.
Just productive, good members of society.
And that's the weirdest part, is that they've kind of hung their hat on the broken veteran.
Yeah.
And I refuse. I was lucky enough to have a producer and showrunner that heard me when I said that for the Mayans. My character was a veteran. A lot of different ways my character could have went. And I asked him, I said, promise me one thing. He doesn't die by suicide. And he goes, you got it. And that was just I don't want to be another part of that.
Yeah.
Cog just telling that same old story, because I don't necessarily agree with it. But me and you know that. We're veterans. And we're you're in the military still or so. But we know the truth of that. The civilians outside of that only know what they see on TV.
Yes.
And so they believe, more than anything, feel bad for your veterans, they're broken, blah, blah, blah. And that is unfair to us, because I think it doesn't help us in any way, shape, or form. And so I'm not mad at any writer. I just feel okay, well, then it's up to me to write something that portrays it in a way that I believe is fair.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm trying to do. I want to tell those stories in a good light. I want to tell the veteran story that there is success, or there could be some downfalls, but then they find success, right? And that's the goal. The goal is to tell stories that I'm very proud of and I believe deserve to be told. I want to tell the story of Pat Tillman, right? Getting that approved is probably never going to happen. I want to tell a story about Brian Terry, who was a Border Patrol agent, who formerly before that was a Marine, right? And who died, unfortunately, through this whole chaos of Fast and Furious, right? I want to tell those stories because I think they deserve to be told. Ellie Marks, she's an incredible veteran. She multiple gold medals in the Paralympics. I want to tell those stories. I'm just not the guy they trust yet with their money.
Sure, yeah.
So eventually, as I get to that, hopefully I'm telling those stories, and that's what I want to do. And then I want to tell stories about my childhood, growing up in LA, and this kind of gang culture that we all tried to get away from,
Yeah.
and some weren't so lucky, And so I want to write what I know, and I want to be a voice of my generation that tells those stories that hopefully leave big impacts and inspires.
Sure. You've done a lot of stuff. So you were like one of the first, you're like a Gen 1, military influencer, content creator, whatever you want to call it. You're now a published author. You've got 2 master's degrees. You've literally been on TV, right? You have a heavy involvement with the Border Patrol community.
Yeah.
I mean, how does it feel having bounced around like that and having so much success in so many different domains?
Confusing. I don't know. I feel like it's all in the same space of just like serving the country, serving people.
Serving people.
Yeah.
Do you feel like serving people has helped you, continue on your journey through recovery, stay sober?
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing. A lot of guys will come to me and say that they don't have purpose or they can't find purpose. I'm like, serve others. You'll find your purpose in serving others. And whether it be they find it in counseling, whether they find it in just support, whether they find it in whatever that is. But, that's how I found myself is, we have our nonprofit. We do retreats. We help people get sober. We help people heal trauma. And that becomes very therapeutic and fills my cup to continue to show guys how others have done it successfully.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's no, one of the themes of this podcast has been there's no one size fits all. What works for one person doesn't work for another. And at the end of the day, as long as you can get there, as long as we can get somebody to identifying, it might be time to address this, and then helping them get to wherever they need to get to a healthy place. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
And I've been kind of shocked at the amount of people that have not been hardcore, even people that are doing abstinence themselves from alcohol.
Yeah.
They're like, this works for me, but it's not necessarily like what is for everybody.
Yeah.
Because for decades, the AA outlook of, hey, if you ever had a problem drinking, you can't drink at all, has been kind of the answer.
Yeah. So it's funny. I didn't do AA, but I absolutely love AA.
Yeah.
Right. I've gone to groups. I've gone to AA groups and stuff, but I wouldn't say I've done the 12 steps.
Sure.
But it's interesting that when I've talked to my friends who are like my sober group, I got golf with the sober group, and I have a sober group, but I'll have a non-alcoholic beer, and some of them are like, bro, that's risky. I'm like, I guess to some people it might be. For me, I still enjoy the taste of beer. And they're making really good non-alcoholics these days that I think I'm always gonna want a real beer. I think I'm always gonna crave, I don't know, my mouth waters when I think of them sometimes. You know what I'm saying? But I'm under control. And having one beer, non-alcoholic, with my family, I don't see a problem with it personally from my journey, And I won't ever bash anyone for anything, drinking, not drinking. It's none of my business. Is your life in good standing? Are you good to your kids? Are you good to your wife? Then who am I to judge? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But there is this interesting space where people don't know how to, like everyone has their own journey with this, man, and like what you think, what you're willing to do is on you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what's interesting. But I think some people project their uncomfortable and their insecurities onto others sometimes in the sober space. And for me, it's just like everyone's on their journey, man.
Yeah. Insecurity does a lot of weird things for a lot of people,
Especially men.
especially
men with
men.
egos. We have bigger egos than women. We just do.
Yeah, it's true. So, how many years did you do in?
Total of 18. That's active and reserve.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have more experience than the vast majority of people. Most people, I think, get out after one contract, maybe two. You've seen the culture. You've seen it from now multiple components because you did reserve time. Yeah. How do you believe that the military, culturally, not necessarily as an organization, right? We're not bashing the organization, but culturally, what is its relationship with alcohol? Does it promote drinking? Does it promote healthy behaviors? What do you think?
How do I word this in a way that's not like... So Ranger Battalion, also from Ranger Battalion experience, active duty, and then I'll go from a reserve standpoint. Okay, so from active duty, it is part of the Ranger culture to do the Ranger Ball. And in the Ranger Ball, we get the grog,
Yeah.
whatever they call it, right? And they have all the different alcohol. So yeah, it's ingrained in the culture of being a Ranger. And I imagine that's very similar in every unit. They have their own version of this,
Yeah.
you know? And so, yeah, the military has turned it into, this is what we do. If you're a Ranger, you do this. And that's unhealthy, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know how they'll ever pivot from that, but they should. And I
Right.
think especially the Ranger Battalion, because of my experiences, how much some of these young, impressionable, you know, soldiers get caught in drinking incidents.
Yeah.
At some point, they should pivot and say, hey, we're going to do a Ranger ball. We're going to involve no alcohol. I don't know if that'll ever happen. Right. I don't think it'll ever happen.
I think the world might like split in half.
But they should.
Yeah.
They should. If they actually care about their soldiers, they should. Right?
Yeah.
Or they should create an environment where they keep them there and they can safeguard them. Right? Something.
Sure.
But when you're introducing alcohol in a military environment, you're part.
And
you're
then
part
you're
of the
like,
problem.
have a plan.
Right. Exactly. And
then-
it's no different in the reserves.
Yeah.
Now, going to the reserve side of things, you'd go to the weekend drill, and that night you're having dinner with your first sergeant, your commander, and your soldier, and you're all drinking at freaking, you know, Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
Right? And it's part of the culturally, like, you feel like this is what you should do that weekend.
Yeah.
And every Ranger ball, or excuse me, every ball, every ceremony, everything involves alcohol. So, yeah, the military has fully ingrained it into the culture, and it's acceptable. And I think they should find a way to pivot it. Plain and simple. I definitely do.
Well, it just doesn't allow us to perform like as warfighters. I mean, it quite literally makes you worse.
Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, their justification is like, oh, they need to blow some steam.
Way
you
to
know what I
cut
mean?
loose,
right?
yeah.
And I don't necessarily agree that has to be the answer. I
Yeah,
think
there's so many ways to do that.
it's one of those things where people always go, well, this is how it's always been done. And when you hear that right away, you're like, well, then maybe we should change it.
Yeah. Anytime I hear that, I'm immediately skeptical. And I fully understand the value in history and tradition, right?
In camaraderie.
Yeah.
Hell yes, I get it.
But sometimes traditions need to be addressed if they are unhealthy.
Yeah,
You know, we've done that societally forever. The military has been a catalyst for
Yeah.
change in so many different ways.
Yeah, I agree. You know, it's not uncommon in law enforcement as well.
Really?
It's the same thing.
Oh, wow. I didn't think about that.
It is the same culture, dude. I just jumped from one to another.
Well, it's a significant amount of veterans, too, right?
Oh,
and they're
exactly.
bringing the
Yes.
military culture.
And they're teaching that same idea. There's parties, that drinking. There's after work you drink. And I get it, dude. But like, it's not. It should be phased out into a space where we're not involving it into that profession.
Or at least not, yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, not at all in the profession, probably. Because it's one thing if somebody has drinks socially with friends or whatever,
Yeah.
but when you're getting a massive group of people who quite literally have been trauma bonded together
Yeah,
in some way, it might be through, you know, the trauma of seeing people die overseas, or it might be in the trauma of just having the worst boss you've ever had who also has complete legal control over you, right? There's a spectrum here. And then you're getting that giant group of people together, and you're like, hey, you guys can all drink as much as you want right now. Oh, by the way, we got you guys a hotel. It's in a parking lot over.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they're fully facilitating, and it's insane to me because I don't feel like there's other professions that do this. Maybe does law enforcement?
Law enforcement does it.
Yeah. So yeah, but law enforcement is like paramilitary. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think they're very similar cultures.
Right.
They definitely parallel. And it's something that I think people should think about. They should think about before you have a work party, a work get together, a celebration. You should think about whether you should even involve alcohol at all.
Right.
Or why not just do all non-alcoholic? What does it hurt?
Yeah.
I think half them won't even notice. Half the Rangers be like, "This is great. I'm getting so drunk." You're like, "I don't know, bro."
It literally reminds me of the Wolf on Wall Street scene. Oh God, he walks up to what was the character's name? I can't remember. The main character, Leonardo DiCaprio, played him. And so his buddy walks up and he's like, "What are you drinking?" He's like, like non-alcoholic beer." And he's like, "Oh yeah, you drink a bunch of them, you get messed up, right?" And he's like, "No, like there's no alcohol." And he's like, "Yeah, but you get turn up."
That's how we were overseas, man. In Afghanistan, they had the non-alcoholics, and we're like, "If you drink them real fast, bro, you might get a buzz."
Oh my God. You might get a buzz. That in and of itself is like somebody from the outside looking in would be like wildly concerned.
Yeah.
Like the whole purpose of this is to not get drunk, guys. And you're like, yeah, but like maybe we could.
Yeah, it's like 0.5. So if like you drink 5 really fast, you'll get it. You're like, I don't know.
You have like, it seems like a ton of stuff going on at any given time.
Yeah.
Tons of projects you're working on. Is there anything that you want to speak to specifically? Anything you're really excited about? Something you think is really impactful?
I'm pretty excited about all of it, I guess. I think I don't know, I'll start here. The nonprofit. So we have TMRW Battalion, which is like Tomorrow Battalion.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot of we help veterans and first responders and their kids with healing trauma.
Yeah.
Like, so when you think about all the stuff in the veteran and law enforcement space or first responder space, these guys have a lot of nonprofits that'll take them like fishing or hunting or all this stuff. But, just from my own experience, I think that's kind of a distraction from the real work that needs to be done, that we need to get down to the foundation of helping them heal trauma, like heal some, whether it be childhood trauma or military or law enforcement or first responder, whatever it is, but heal that stuff, meaning give them tools and teach them how to manage some of those stressors, do some EMDR work or other things they can do, some guys psychedelic therapy, whatever.
Yeah. That's
going to really unpack some of the trauma down there that leads them to drinking, that leads them to self-destructive mechanisms, right? And so with us is before you go hiking, camping, all those things, let's heal the trauma first. And I think getting down to that foundation is where you really start making impacts on the community that will last them a long time. And then after you've healed that, then go find your passion, whether it be horse riding, fishing, wood chiseling, whatever. And so that's what Tomorrow Battalion does. We focus on teaching a lot of tools and healing, and sometimes by way of the retreat, sometimes by way of our men's calls. I focus more on men than anything because it's just what I understand from my own experience. And so we've been doing that for over 3 years now, and it's been really successful, and it's been really fun for me to be able to kind of create these things for the veterans and first responders. And that's like our biggest thing that happens right now. Outside of that is just writing and podcasting, so I have a couple podcasts that I think are fun, but the Vinny Rock podcast is always the same thing. I just talk about mental health, wellness, and invite people that have interesting stories. And outside of that is I have several other projects coming down the pipe that I'm writing. I'm working as an actor currently on a show called Homestead. You can find the first movie on Amazon, and then there's 2 episodes, and I'll be on episode 3, and then kind of several others from episode 4 or 5, I think 7 and 8 or whatever it is. But that's just kind of the acting project that I'm working on right now. A couple other writing projects that are coming down the pipe here and there, and just trying to, I'm just trying to see how far I can kind of take this life before God takes it from me.
Sure, yeah. A lot of the themes that we've talked about have to do, and it sounds like masculinity is important to you, specifically like healthy masculinity, what it means to be a man. The work that you're doing in nonprofits and really anything else, how does that tie in? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I necessarily think of it as masculinity personally.
Sure.
I think it's just like how I see myself to be a healthy man.
Yeah.
We could label it masculinity. I don't know. But I guess it would be like, how do I help men just get to a place where they can feel comfortable in their own skin, that they're willing to express that, there's a problem, they need to fix it, to be held accountable for their own actions, to be able to communicate when they're feeling the type of way. I don't know about you, but like I've stared at my phone going through crisis and can't find anyone that I feel confident or comfortable enough to talk to. And so getting guys into a place where they can communicate those feelings of
creating a network or a community.
Right. Exactly. So, we've created a space where I think the men in our group are confident enough to be able to express like, hey, I'm feeling a type of way, whether it be relationships, whether it be their weight, whether it be whatever it is.
Yeah.
And just kind of cultivating a space like that to me is important for men. And so I'm really proud to have been able to create that currently, and kind of trying to keep it like that is important. Some guys will mask their emotions through comedy. That, like we all know that, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so like instead of saying like they're having a hard day, they'll be like, "Hey, what's up, effers, you mothers?" And you're like,
yeah.
"What's up?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, I try and break down these guys to a point where like you don't have to use comedy to mask anything. Just say you're feeling insecure, feeling weak, feeling lonely, and we'll address it. And we'll find where that comes from, where it stems from, and how do we manage that, and how do you implement tools in your life that you can manage it yourself, hopefully. Because here's what I believe, man. I believe in the next 10 years, you're going to see a lot of people go towards the wellness space and not have to use a counselor anymore because they're going to understand what they're going through by way of education, by way of these influencers, by way of whatever it is. And that we're going to get to a place where we have to I would say not medicate, but implement tools to manage crisis. Like, you don't need a counselor to say when to breathe. You just need to know, like, hey, this is one of those moments where I need to take a beat. I need to do some box breathing, bring myself down from this anxiety, and recenter. And when we get to a place where we can do that, man, that's gonna be a really healthy space. And you guys that are teaching breathing techniques, meditation, Wim Hof method, sauna, like all these different things that kind of help with the brain kind of resetting. Like, once you start teaching guys that, they don't need to do anything other than address it right in that moment. And it's no different than when someone like feels the type of way, like, I got to go to the gym, I got to get this energy out of me. It's no different when they find themselves in anxiety. Use a tool. When they find themselves, they just found out like they're whatever's cheating on whatever. Use a tool, right? There's these tools that we need. I think counselors are going to go more towards the mentorship side and start just guiding people towards it, because we've seen throughout the past 20-something years, these veterans go to counselors for 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, whatever it is, and realize, like, man, there's still very little significant change because these guys aren't taking actions in really serving themselves. And so I do believe that that's slowly dying off, where guys are starting to take action. And it's really exciting to watch, as I observe the whole community and these SEALs and Rangers and all these guys doing really cool stuff to try and to lean towards the wellness space. It's just leading to a place where we're going to be self-sufficient in finding answers for ourselves. And that's what I want people to get to. I want guys to get to a place where they, like, hey, I know right now I'm feeling type of way and I know how to fix it.
In the work that you've done in your nonprofit, I mean, what have you found has been people's biggest hang up as far as like getting to a healthy place?
Men are not willing to communicate to others that they're going through a hard time.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is when there's someone who is willing to do that in the group, they all realize that they're not alone.
So as long as somebody's willing to get it started.
Yes.
Like start the conversation.
Yeah. If someone is willing to be, and using the word, Carl Monger is a good friend of mine. We work a lot together, and he always says, don't say the word vulnerable, just say honest. And it's like, if someone is willing to be honest.
Oh, wow. Yeah. What a profound thing to say. Yeah, because vulnerable has like a, maybe not necessarily, well, I mean, it does have a negative connotation to some people, because vulnerability is like.
It's hard to do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no.
But honesty is something that we all should be doing anyway.
Should be doing. So if you're honest with yourself and say, look, right now I'm feeling this way. If you're in a group of men who can be honest with each other, it's a lot easier for others to open up and say, you know what, me too. I'm not alone in that emotion. I'm not alone in feeling this. In the Ranger platoon that I was in, and I say that incident we had in Iraq, the one that I explained earlier that kind of had hang-ups with, I'm the only one I've ever heard publicly mention it. Now, there's a few others that are public, right, that are public figures, I would say. And I'm not saying they need to, by any means. I'm saying that I felt weak because no one else would even address it. I felt really? I was not built like the warrior that they are because no one ever mentioned it, and I sat in it for a long time thinking like, dang, why am I the only one that feels kind of uncomfortable with that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I believe that there's a lot of those guys probably did too, but they kind of masked it or ignored it or whatever you want to say, probably still drinking till this day about it, right?
Yeah.
And so if one of them would have ever said, dude, that was kind of jacked up, I think I would have healed a lot in me already. I've just been like, I'm not alone in feeling that way.
Sure.
And so in this group of men that I work with, and all these men throughout social media that listen to what I say in these podcasts, you'll always I get messages like crazy. They'll be like, dude, you just said what was on my mind. And I think when we feel like we're part of this bigger system and we're all connected and we're all experiencing these hard things at times that are natural, I think you start to heal these guys knowing that they're not alone.
God, that's really interesting. Yeah, shifting the thought process from vulnerability to honesty, from something that maybe has a negative connotation to some people to something that we all intrinsically, inherently know we should be doing anyway.
Our nonprofit has something that's pretty special that we created that's called Healing Through Hitting. And I created it based on my experience with EMDR, my education, and my love for baseball. And as I'm working on what's my big dissertation going to be in this psychology master's program, I try to how do I create something where veterans, first responders, or anyone can work on themselves without going to a counselor? This has been my thing, right? Because guys like me don't want to go to a counselor and say, hey, here's my problems. It just doesn't feel great. I've done it, but I know there's a million other people like me that never will, right? They won't cross the threshold to even talk to someone. And so how do you create something that they don't ever have to talk to someone? And so as I got into the craziness of this deep dive, this rabbit hole of just thought, EMDR, essentially, let me explain this real quick because it'll make sense when I talk about the baseball stuff. So EMDR, essentially, if you have to explain it, it's rapid eye movements, left and right, bilateral stimulation of your eyes going left to right, which stimulates the brain. So it makes both sides, both hemispheres of the brain engaged. As you're doing EMDR with the counselor and your eyes are moving back and forth, it's stimulating everything. And at that moment, the counselor asks you what your trauma is, and you talk about it. You tell me what it smelled like that day, what happened, how did it make you feel, all those things. And what that's doing, imagine a windshield wiper cleaning off the window. This is grabbing a memory that's stored in the wrong side of your brain, creating post-traumatic stress, and storing it appropriately so now it's memory.
Wow.
So this visceral image that you cannot get away from that reactivates every time some kind of trigger happens, and it gives you the physiological effects, the breathing, the sweat, all those things. That's PTSD. That's legitimate post-traumatic stress, right? What EMDR does is help it store appropriately, because whatever happened that day during that traumatic moment in all your brain chemistry, the hormones shot off in a way that didn't allow it to store appropriate. And so it's stored pretty much in your frontal cortex, as a visceral image. It is existing, it lives and breathes, it is happening over and over again as you get triggered. EMDR helps you store that as a foggy memory that is harder to really kind of conjure up. And so it doesn't create the same physiological effects. So that's what EMDR can create. So how did she come up with this, right? This lady who came up with it. She was walking in a freaking forest, dude, after a long day, and she's looking left and right, and she felt better at the end of the day. And she kind of reverse engineers, what did I do that I come home and feeling good about, the day that was so hard for her. She did it again, boom, realizes, identifies the bilateral eye movement. Helps, okay? Now there's multiple others, but now I'm a baseball player. I go hit in the batting cage when I'm stressed out, and I'm thinking, why do I feel so good after hitting a baseball? Boom, I put them both together. Tracking a baseball creates bilateral eye movement that recreates the idea of what both hemispheres getting stimulated in the brain. And if you sit there and think about your hard day and hitting a baseball, a certain amount of swings will recreate the same effects of what EMDR is with a counselor.
Really?
So you can essentially heal yourself by thinking about your bad day, think about those bad moments, and hitting a baseball. And this is tested and proven now, right? At the lower end, we did 15 veterans and first responders. We had brain scans. We did several other psychology review testing with Carl Munger, who is an actual counselor and an EMDR professional. We did the whole thing, tested it, and it landed on a positive of the hypothesis and proving in the brain scans that it changed the way they think.
So cool.
Yeah, so we call it healing through hitting is kind of like the general term of it. It's kinetic bilateral neural processing is what the I guess scientific term would be as we continue to kind of push this through the psychology reviews. And it's fascinating because my idea of it's a way that we can get these men to just had a bad day, find a batting cage, schedule a hitting session, hit 60 balls, right?
Yeah.
3 rounds. Think about the bad day, process it on the way home, cool down, boom, done. And that would be just as equal to sitting there with a counselor and talking about it.
Really?
So they would never have to even speak on it. And why this is important, throughout the years of me going to college and dealing with all this stuff, you start to find that a lot of veterans and first responders have childhood trauma that they, and I don't know how to explain this, but what that they will mask as military and law enforcement trauma so that they can cope with it easier by explaining to someone, I have post-traumatic stress from combat. Do you? Or was it being molested as a kid and it's hard to explain that to another man?
Yeah.
Yes, so they mask it with a different trauma just to make it easier to communicate that to counselors and other people.
So is that tied to shame?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not fair. It shouldn't have shame, but yes, there's shame. There's embarrassment, right? It's not common, like when a man that's demasculating, right? Is for a man to say another man has molested them, whatnot. Hard to express that, right? Because we haven't been very truthful with ourselves at times.
Yeah.
So the same vulnerability kind of concept.
Sure.
And so what you find is a lot of men, man, it's more than you would even imagine, and it's more than you would even imagine. I'll say that, and that. What I've recently found is a lot of these men would mask their trauma from childhood and kind of use the military trauma so that it's easier to digest when they tell someone. And so that made me feel even more like, well, how do we create something where people don't even have to talk?
Right.
They can work through it themselves. So we're going through raising money to do a further study to kind of get this. I want this to be nationally world recognized so people can actually use this. And it's not about not going to a counselor. It's about being able to have something that they can trust and be comfortable with and expressing within themselves and work on themselves. No different than going to the gym, no different than going to jiu-jitsu, but now this actually has a therapeutic response to it. It's multiple layers, so not just the bilateral eye movement, but the accomplishment, the sense of accomplishment hitting a baseball is very challenging. The physical fitness aspect of it, and as well as there's a thing called hitter's high, which is similar to like runner's high,
Sure.
which is flow state. So when you get to flow state, it kind of shuts off the noise. A lot of people who struggle with post-traumatic stress and other traumas, being able to shut off the noise around them is therapeutic. And so it creates all four of those at the same time.
Wow, that's incredible. So how did it feel when you had this idea and then you executed it and it actually worked like as you thought it would?
I think just the idea alone was probably the most exciting thing because I knew right away when I thought of it, it was real.
Yeah.
I was in bed with my wife and I just turned to her. I'm like, oh my God, I figured it out. I know it'll work. And she goes, why? Because I've done it. Because I hit and feel great. And then I know the science behind EMDR.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And so when I put that together, I was already like on cloud nine because I knew it. And so I contacted all these high level EMDR doctrines that do this for everybody, right? And they're like, it's plausible. And I was like, bro, let's get it tested. And then when we did it, we were like, wow. But still a long ways to go to get this kind of nationally recognized. But I mean, I'm super proud of that. We've created something that we can still teach people nowadays. And I don't need anything other than knowing that they tried it and it helped.
We really appreciate you. You flew all through the night.
Don't make me feel bad.
We really appreciate you being here, taking the time to come out and talk to us. You were vulnerable with us, right? You were also honest with us. And I really do believe that your story is going to be impactful for a lot of people. You've had tremendous success despite adversity in multiple domains. And so now I want to throw it over to you. Is there anything that you would want to say to our community, to anybody, somebody who's struggling, may think they're struggling, has hit some level of catastrophe? I mean, is there any parting words you want to leave us with?
What I learned in my life was that post-traumatic stress wasn't the heaviest issue I was dealing with. It was actually something that's fairly new and talked about in psychology called moral injury. And this makes sense for the same topic, but it's actually something close to 53% actually deal with moral injury more than they do with post-traumatic stress.
Really?
And let me explain that more, is that post-traumatic stress is, like I said, has a physiological response to your body. Like you have a triggering mechanism that happens and it makes you feel a type of way, whether it be startled or whatnot. Okay? Moral injury is your disposition with an event that you experienced. It's an emotional connection. It's something that can drive you to drinking because you don't know how to cope with it. And that is something that I think more of us deal with than anything. And it's proven. So, and there's studies on this and everything, but it's a newer thought in psychology that is now kind of being more exposed.
Really?
And so our veterans and first responders, I believe, are struggling more with that And that's why drinking is dangerous for them, because internal struggle with faith. Remember my conversation with faith?
Yeah.
Same thing. Internal struggle with the way we were raised, being human, loss of life, and trying to justify all of that with ourselves and how we were raised in our cultures. And that becomes a battle that most of us aren't willing to express publicly. It's along the lines of being honest with ourselves. And so I want you guys to really think, what is it that drives me to drinking? What is it within myself subconsciously that I feel the need to mask and see life through a different lens? Because that is when I would question why I even drink. And that's when I would start to let me find answers on how I can heal that. So then you can get to a place where you're no longer trying to mask life. You're no longer trying to see the world through a different lens. You just want to drink because the community of it and your friends, and in a healthy manner. And so I would really look further into your life experiences and see what it is that drives you to a point where you just don't want to face it sober. And it's a question that you need to ask yourself often. Life is not easy. It is just part of it. Like I live in the mindset of like gratitude that I have life to experience, and that comes with good and bad. And so we will have those your whole life, good, bads, ups and downs and all that. But we really got to get to a place where we can look at ourselves and say, am I trying to manage an experience with alcohol, or am I in a good place with it where I can just experience it sober? Because that's really going to be the determining factor. And I'll leave you with this. I don't like to say the word suicide often. It's just for some reason I like to lean on positive psychology of how we use our language. Mm-hmm. But if you go and look at any of the studies for those of your friends or anyone who's committed suicide, 99% have been drinking.
Really?
So when I say that is there's some kind of, and we already know what it is, we kind of lose inhibitions, the willingness to fight and engage, whatever that is. It's the same mechanism that is the willingness to pull the trigger. And so my choices to become sober was that I didn't want to, for some reason, have the perfect storm of events that happen, and that I'm put myself in a position to do the same to my family. And so I would tell you that drinking is not, it should never be the tool to help you hide from the truth. It should be something that you can use recreationally safe and responsibly. But I would completely stop drinking if I was any of you until I managed to heal a lot of the foundational issues that lead us to drinking. So I give a shit. I care about people. I don't have to do podcasts. I don't have to do any of this stuff. I can just sit at home with my family, but I feel like I've built myself a platform to have a voice to help serve. And if all it is you follow me, you'll see that I live in a life that I speak on, meaning I'm trying to be a good dad, I'm trying to be a good husband, and I'm trying to be a good server to this community, leave the place better than when you found it. And that means that I'm here for you, any one of you, to reach out to me. I am considered to be a substance abuse counselor, but if you just want to talk and just say, hey, I have some questions, I'll answer. I answer every single message that comes through my social media. I'll give you my phone number directly because I don't really give a crap. I just want to be there to be someone who can mentor you if you need it and explain to you why you do the things you do. I can help you reframe a lot of this in a way where you can be like, I get it, and I want to be better, and I'd be there to help you. So I hope the podcast answers questions. I hope the podcast makes you curious. And in anything I've said today that you want more information on, I have all the white paper studies. I have everything you can think of. I've written a book on healing through hitting, so you can read that. I've talked about my transition. You can read that. I'm working on a sobriety book right now to explain that. And it's just, for me, it's like, I'm here for you, and all you have to do is just reach out, and I'll answer.
Well, thanks a lot. We appreciate your time. It was profound and powerful, and we appreciate you sharing your story.
Thank you.
And mandatory funding. This is the Check Your Six-Pack podcast, a veteran podcast done in conjunction with the Center for the Study of Traumatic Stress and Uniformed Services University. You guys just heard yet another really, really amazing story. We will see you next time.
We're back behind the beakers.
This isn't a safety brief, but it might save your life.
Dr. Sarah Maggio, reporting for duty.
And Kelly Huber, ready to stir the pot.
In this episode, we tackle PTSD, moral injury, and of course, what happens when you add Fireball.
Let's start with some of the neuroscience behind stress, reaction, and regulation.
Like alcohol, stress generally impacts all bodily systems. It has its dirty little hands at everything, but it's key for survival.
Your body is designed to react and adapt quickly to stressful or even life-threatening environments, and your HPA axis, short for hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, can be thought of as mission command for your stress response.
When you encounter stress, a hormone-based communication system activates for the downstream release of cortisol, the stress hormone, and adrenaline, your fight or flight hormone.
Cortisol and adrenaline activate the survival systems, narrowing focus on threats, increasing your heart rate, and spiking the energy available to your muscles and organs. Ready for combat.
Or ready for running away. I'm a scientist. I'd probably run. Probably not that fast. Unless it's zombies, I have a whole other plan for that threat.
Are you done?
Yeah, I'm for sure not going to publicly share my zombie apocalypse plans. Not yet, at least.
You have fun with that. Anyway, the human body is designed for automatic, short-term, physical and mental responses to keep us alert and ready to deal with danger.
The cortisol produced during stress is also supposed to close the loop and trigger your HPA axis to end the stress response. But chronic or intense stress, like experiencing trauma, can disrupt the normal and healthy functioning of this system.
This can weaken the immune system and increase risks for cardiovascular and metabolic issues, and for mental health conditions like mood disorders, anxiety, and you guessed it, PTSD.
PTSD can happen after experiencing or witnessing trauma, and it is more common than you think. It's estimated that about 6% of the US population will have PTSD at some point in their life.
And it's not limited to combat. It can happen to anyone, and it is not a sign of weakness.
PTSD is not always obvious or easy to identify. It can look different for different people.
But there are 4 main groups of common symptoms that could help in recognizing possible PTSD.
Re-experiencing, which can include flashbacks, nightmares, or intrusive memories.
Avoidance of people, places, or other reminders connected to the traumatic event.
Hyperarousal, feeling like you are always on guard, jumpiness, having trouble sleeping, irritability, a lot like my personality.
And negative mood and thinking, which can include feelings of guilt, shame, detachment, or hopelessness.
The signs can be subtle or delayed, and it can even build gradually over time.
And we cannot emphasize enough that this is not a sign of weakness. It is a biologically based reaction to intense or enduring stress that causes a disruption in the system, and you don't have to face it alone.
The topic of moral injury also came up in this episode. As Vince mentioned, it's not the same as PTSD, which is more about fear and danger involved in a traumatic event.
Instead, moral injury refers to the internal struggle that can result from exposure to high-stakes events where a person's strong moral convictions like, I must protect the innocent, or I must tell the truth, are severely violated.
Vince gave a great real-life personal example in this episode of his struggle with guilt over an incident that happened overseas. When an intense life or death situation creates an unavoidable moral compromise, it can cause deep psychological wounds that are extremely difficult to confront.
Symptoms can include long-lasting feelings of guilt, shame, anger, and disgust.
Feeling damaged or unworthy and lost of trust in others.
There can also be a spiritual outcome, such as a loss of faith in previous religious beliefs and a loss in the belief in a just world.
It's important to be aware of the symptoms of moral injury as it is associated with and can lead to PTSD, depression, suicidality, and substance use disorders.
Moral injury is common and treatable with treatments that focus more on meaning, forgiveness, and reconnection, and it deserves just as much attention as PTSD.
Getting help is not weakness. And in the words of Vince's counselor, F your feelings, dude. I just want to fix your brain. Early care makes a huge difference.
There are solid evidence-based approaches that work, like EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which Vince mentioned. It involves structured recall of trauma while doing eye movements or tapping, which can help the brain process the memory in a new way, reducing its emotional intensity over time.
One of the most effective therapies is called prolonged exposure therapy, or PE. It helps people gradually and safely face memories and reminders of trauma instead of avoiding them. Over time, that reduces the emotional punch and helps make sense of what happened. Think of it like running drills.
Running drills. That sounds like it sucks.
Well, sure, it's difficult at the start, but the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Then there's cognitive processing therapy, CPT. This one targets the unhelpful beliefs that often come with trauma, like guilt, shame, or self-blame. It gives you the tools to challenge those thoughts and reframe them. Instead of being stuck with, I should have done more, or it's my fault, CPT helps you step back and see the situation with more clarity. It's about changing the way your brain responds, not erasing the memory.
And medications can play an important role in treatment, especially antidepressants like SSRIs, SNRIs. They don't erase trauma, but they can ease symptoms, make it easier to sleep, and help you fully engage in therapy.
There isn't just one path to recovery. Treatments are tools, and like any mission, success comes from using the right tools with the right support at the right time.
This is how you optimize your mental readiness arsenal. With the right care, recovery is possible.
And now, as promised, what happens when you add fireball instead of healthy coping skills?
Alcohol itself is a stressor. It activates the HPA axis. We talked about this being the mission command for your stress response. At higher BAC levels, cortisol increases.
But this seems to happen in social or lighter drinkers. In heavier drinkers, that cortisol response gets dulled, and in those who are alcohol dependent,
The stress response seems to get stuck in overdrive until it malfunctions into long-term blunting in cortisol responses.
by modifying the activity of this axis, alcohol can compromise the ability of the body to appropriately respond to stressors.
Like any piece of gear, if you overuse it, abuse it, or ignore maintenance, it's going to fail you when you need it most.
To recap, PTSD and moral injury are real. They're common and they're treatable.
Recovery doesn't mean erasing the past. It means regaining control so it doesn't control you.
And alcohol? That's not a treatment plan. It's arming the enemy inside your own head.
So don't wait until your brain is mission-failed gear. Get the right tools, the right team, and the right backup.
Recovery is possible, help is available, and no one has to carry this alone.
When you and your unit are stressed to the max, mental skills can make the difference. Learn about quick, practical methods for staying sharp and maintaining a tactical advantage in high-stakes situations. Methods like win, self-talk, and grounding. Coach yourself and your team through the chaos. Click the link below and watch Warrior Mindset, Gaining a Tactical Advantage from Walter Reed Army Institute of Research on YouTube. Learn the mental skills that give you the edge when it counts most.